The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to On Cue. I'm your host, Eric Olson. On today's program, we learn more about the proposed expansion of the Hormel Institute. We'll also be talking with members of the Zonta organization to find out what they are doing to eliminate violence against women. And Belita Schindler shares the Vision 2020 plans for the Austin Utilities Building. It's all coming up next on Cue.
From KSMQ Television in Austin, this is On Cue, connecting interesting issues and interesting people. On Cue.
The Hormel Institute was established back in 1942 by J.C. Hormel and is a research unit of the University of Minnesota and collaborative research partner with Mayo Clinic. In 2008, the Hormel Institute dedicated a new state-of-the-art building. Today, they are making plans to expand. Gail Dennison, Dr. Ann Bode, and Jim Herm from the city are all joining us to share this exciting news. Welcome all. And we recall, if you watched the news or followed the newspapers back at the tail end of the last legislative session, the Hormel Institute was successful in receiving some funding, some bonding funding for a large expansion. Gail, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, we were very fortunate because this year we didn't even know if the legislature would be able to agree on a bonding bill. And so it was one of those things that we knew we needed bonding bill funding for our project to go forward. So it was very important to us in our expansion plans. Led by Jean Poppy and Dan Sparks, who introduced the bill, the Hormel Institute asked for $13.5 million through the City of Austin's Port Authority to fund a new lab building that would be added on to our existing facility. And that did pass. It had full bipartisan support. Senator Dave Senjum, the majority leader in the Senate side, and the House side, everyone came together really in support of the bonding bill project.
And the governor.
Yeah, and it was the largest privately funded project in the entire bonding bill.
Congratulations. Dr. Bode, how does this change, does it change the focus of the Institute when this new edition is up and running? Will the types of research you do change? Will you be going in a different direction or adding projects?
I think there are two things that are going to happen. One is that this will be a Mayo Clinic Hormel Institute. And so what that means is that this will be a department of the Mayo Clinic. And so the employees that work there will be a combination of Mayo Clinic employees and university employees. So it will be a collaborative effort. And Mayo Clinic predicts they're thinking that they will be able to hire between 120 and 150 new employees. So that's a major job increase.
With cancer as the focus,
right.
Though, still.
The focus is actually going to be, it'll be like a bridge to bridge the gap between our really, I think, very, very excellent basic science research where we're studying mechanisms and the clinic, so that we will be able to translate the results that we get into the patient population through this new collaborative effort. I think that's very, very exciting and very important.
Certainly is. And when the funding comes down and the Institute begins plans, the city has a big role to play also. Jim, where do you fit in getting this up and going? What kind of challenges will you have?
Well, the city's Port Authority is, of course, the economic development arm of the city. And so as the Port Authority's executive director, I'll be responsible for the actual project. It will be a Port Authority project, okay? And that's how we were able to receive the bonding dollars. It's very important in a selfish perspective, set aside the wonderful things they're doing in cancer research, is 120 or more excellent jobs here in Austin. And that's where the Port Authority comes in. That's really what their job is for economic development. So it's a great partnership, and you know, having the triad, so to speak, the university and you know, working with others as well is really very helpful. But from the city's perspective and the Port Authority's perspective, it's, you know, let's you know, we'll clean up that area, we'll expand the building, and technically will be a project of the Port Authority.
And maybe some residential. Will there be a housing piece?
Well, that could be another expansion piece in the future, you know, maybe for scientists or for, you know, and then of course we have the public improvements as well, you know, parking lots and sewer and water and water retention and so on and so forth. So there's a big public piece of this anyway, but you know, there certainly could be another phase in the future for those types of expansions as well.
And it's somewhat interesting to talk this way, Gail, because business is good for the Institute, but on the other hand, we're all still fighting cancer, you know? So it's great that we have this expansion, and hopefully it'll bear fruit someday.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what is so exciting about the partnerships that the Hormel Institute has cultivated. To have Mayo Clinic, you know, the whole world has heard of Mayo Clinic because of its expertise and clinical trials, and so for their scientists to want to join in with the Hormel Institute really shows the quality of the research done at the Hormel Institute. You know, it's a wonderful kind of role reversal, Rochester coming to Austin, and yet what is important to both organizations is how do we find answers to cancer as quickly as possible. So the Hormel Institute has this cutting-edge research in cancer prevention, Mayo Clinic's expertise in, well, how do we take that and apply it to people? How can we perform clinical trials on the information that they learned in the lab? And for you and I, that's important because it speeds up using the information that the scientist discovers.
Oh, okay. So, Doctor, I was thinking a lot of it is a business partnership, but it's really because of the patient, the access to patients?
It's a research partnership. So, for example, we do a lot of work looking at how dietary factors can help prevent cancer. And we do a lot of mechanistic kind of work. But
green tea.
Green tea.
Yeah.
And you know, Mayo's running a clinical trial now, or has in the past run a trial with EGCG, and to determine whether that has an effect on cancer development. So those kinds of things that we do, where we've identified the protein targets that are important in cancer, and we can then work with the clinical, the physician scientists to get those findings into people. I'll give you an example. We work a lot with ginger, and we have been working for many years on developing an anti-skin cancer agent with ginger, and that work is just about ready now to go into the clinic, where we can test it in patients to see if it really can prevent human skin cancer.
And then the education of the physicians also is probably part of it also. Years ago, I'll throw this one at you, I had a doctor, my general practitioner, because I took nutritional supplements, vitamins, so on, and he referred to that as, well, it's just expensive urine, is what he called it. Now, this was 10 years ago, but is there educating that also needs to be done within that industry about findings, green tea and the like, that breakthroughs that you find?
Definitely, but I think your physician probably was correct, because there's really not a lot of evidence that supplements are beneficial against cancer, and that the best tactic is to perhaps eat whole foods and use those in a prevention mode.
Not even my garlic? What about I take my garlic?
Yeah, it's a whole food.
Multivitamin and so on? Okay. All right. And what's the timeline, Jim, on this? Best you know, or maybe it's better addressed to Gail. I don't know. What?
Well, it'll definitely be, begun in 2013, and it'll probably take a full year to accomplish it. So it'll be sometime in 2014 before we're done with the project.
And is residency a concern? You hear around town how many people who work at the Institute, do the top scientists, do they live in Austin?
Eric,
that kind of...
It's so funny. I love this question. For some reason, you know how there's myths that are out there? This is one of those myths that somehow people think that, a lot of people live outside of Austin. The last time we did this calculation, over 95% of the employees of the Hormel Institute lived in Austin. It's a very high percentage, probably higher than other major employers. There's a few that live outside of Austin, and that is, that just goes with the territory.
But I'm the new guy, so I get away with asking questions like that.
Yeah. No, but it is one of those questions that I think possibly because they're very international that, hard to really figure out if Austin, has a place for their spouse. A lot of times it's a trailing spouse type of a thing. Mm-hmm. If he or she happens to be a scientist, well, maybe they need to work at Mayo Clinic and then they choose to live in Rochester. But again, it's a very small percentage at the Hormel Institute. For the most part, they live here and they work here.
We're out of time now, but that's fascinating. Thank you, Dr. Ambold, for being here. Gail Dennison, always a pleasure. Jim Herm, good to see you again.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
You betcha. Thank you. And more On Cue coming your way right after this.
You can watch On Cue anytime by visiting the KSMQ TV website, ksmq.org.
And welcome back to On Cue. We're going to talk for a few moments about a very serious subject, and that is eliminating violence against women, the problem of violence against women. It continues even in our region here in southeastern Minnesota, and we're going to explore some options and some opportunities for people to reach out and get help if they need it. We're going to talk right now with our Sheriff of Mower County, Therese Amazai, and Cheryl Rederath of Zonta in southeastern Minnesota. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Sheriff Amazai, is this a significant problem in all parts of the country, or more so, less so in Mower County in southeast Minnesota?
In law enforcement profession, we see it throughout, the United States and certainly throughout Minnesota, and it is an issue. We have numerous reports of domestic assault situations, and several of our inmates in our jail are up there because of domestic assaults, and those are only the ones that get reported and actually get arrested. But we know it continues, on a daily, hourly basis.
And 99% are male assaulting females.
Correct.
I mean, of spousal abuse or that
correct.
Kind of thing.
Correct.
And also talking prior to going on here, it was interesting to me that the time of year we're coming into, the holiday time, is especially high incidence of these kinds of cases, Sheriff.
Correct. This is definitely the time when we see more arrests for the crime, as well as more reports. And it's always underreported. Women of domestic assault, 9 times out of 10 don't report, and that's the unfortunate part. But when they do, law enforcement does take action.
And why is it this time of year?
I think it's the stress. People may be out of jobs. The children are anticipating a great holiday season. Santa Claus is coming. They're looking forward to that. The dollar signs are always greater during the holiday time, and if someone's unemployed, that puts a great financial stress and stress within the home.
And see, my not knowing this issue at all, just biased, I said, well, it's probably all just alcohol or drug abuse, but not so.
Not so. No, I would say not.
So what? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just think it's families, and each family handles it in a different way. And I think during this time, because it's the holiday season, women are afraid to make the report. They don't want to uproot their family if that's something that might happen because of the abuse. So it is a secret. You know, a lot of people, you wouldn't know some of the people that are being abused in an everyday life.
And because of that, I suppose if you are a loved one in the extended family or a neighbor, you know, maybe you think something, but how does one begin that dialogue or approach? It would be difficult, I think, to have that discussion.
Right. You know, usually we get the reports from the neighbors or family members during the summertime when obviously it's audible, windows are open, you know, those kinds of things. But in the winter, we don't get those reports. So it's a very difficult situation, and you know, quite technically, if the woman doesn't want to report it, it's not going to be reported.
And what are there tips for family members to how to talk to their loved one if their sister or sister-in-law or somebody they suspect is being abused?
Well, I would think that you'd want to just kind of keep it one-on-one with the individual that is possibly being abused before you go anywhere with it. You try and at least talk to them, find out if they'll give you any information. And there again, sometimes they're afraid to release that information no matter how close. It could be mom and dad trying to get the information, a brother, sister, like Trace said, a neighbor, but they're afraid a lot of times.
Oh yeah, and we see on the news the I think rare case of restraining orders that don't restrain.
Right. You know, those are the worst cases.
If the situation escalates to the point where they are no longer together, the couple, do restraining orders work?
In some cases. Certainly, you know, they all say, well, it's just a piece of paper, that's not going to keep me away. But in a lot of these incidents, you know, they've been arrested, they've went to jail, they don't want to go back. So that restraining order can be a great service. And there is a service organization out there available for women, the Crime Victims Resource Center, that does aid women and men as well that are in domestic abuse situations with obtaining the proper restraining order or order for protection.
And is that through Mower County?
It's through Austin and Mower County, yes.
Okay, so they can call, or the number is on the county website?
Yes, it's actually the Crime Victims Resource Center.
Yes, for us.
Yes,
how nice.
Yes,
okay.
and we do use that. It's a law enforcement tool as well. You know, we carry those cards with us when we respond to the domestic abuse situation, so that they do have a resource.
Over time, have they gone up as a percentage? I mean, is it on the rise, going down? Any trends?
I think probably right now it's on a rise.
Right. You know, the orders for protection, we see them, and it's kind of cyclic. You know, they come in great numbers, and then, you know, they do get dropped on occasion where the women or men come in and say, you know, we want this dismissed, and the judges are dismissing them. But, you know, we do see more of these.
And I can only imagine how alone the person might feel.
Right.
And they don't know that a Zonta is out there.
Right. Yes, and you know, it's not only them, the victim themselves. They usually have children involved, and they're concerned about what's going to happen with their children once this. You know, if they make a statement, how is this going to affect my children? They're living in this situation daily, but yet, how do I help them get through this when I haven't found the way yet to truly get through it?
What if it's an immediate, like, emergency situation, and the person says, hey, I got to get out of here, or thinks it, but I have no way to go, or nothing to do?
Right. There are, once again, this service will provide emergency shelter. You know, there is no house that they can go to. However, there are families that are willing to take others in need in these domestic situations. So definitely this is a good resource. And you know, there are things that they can connect victims of abuse to.
And Zonta, from the outside, from membership, how can you help make a difference to cut these numbers down?
Well, basically, we have had the Crime Victims Center come and speak to our members, so we really have an inside idea of how they can help people if they are victims. And their program is fantastic. They do a wonderful job to, like Teresa said, possibly place them in a safe haven so that they don't have to walk back into that house and be afraid. And Zonta's there. We try and do a lot of advertising, not really advertising, I shouldn't say, but making people aware of what's going on. Not just even about the violence, but Zonta is worldwide with literacy and other programs that we do too. So we try and help children as well as, you know.
And I was going to ask that, does education help, like earlier education for boys? Or is that not, do we not know if there's anything we can do early on to head off?
You know, certainly getting out of that abusive relationship so that, you know, it doesn't foster in that family.
Oh.
You know, separating the abuser from the abused is a good situation, because you don't want to teach your son by keeping him in that relationship, or daughter, that it's okay.
So as opposed to education, it's getting out of the situation that's much more effective.
Yes.
Because it does pass down.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I think because they see it, you know, like not always on a daily basis, but you know, it can be weekly. Some people live it every day. It's what they know. And so by eliminating that, maybe hopefully we can break that cycle of abuse.
And definitely go to the website, folks. And get more information. What's that phone number over on your table tent here?
It is 437-6680.
437-6680. That's the phone number of the Crime Victims Resource Center. And is somebody on the other end most of the time?
Or they can leave a message and they will get back with them in a very, very timely manner.
Okay. And the website also for Zonta is, here it all comes, folks, Zonta Club of Austin MN.org. Sheriff Amaziah and Cheryl Rudderath, thank you so much for the important work you're doing on this issue, and thanks for stopping in for On Cue today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll be back with our Vision 2020 segment in just a moment.
Queue up your own comments for On Cue and send them to us at onq@ksmq.org. On Cue's Vision 2020 segment is brought to you by Hormel Foundation, Games People Play, and Turtle Creek Estates.
And welcome back to On Cue. It's our Vision 2020 segment right now, and Belita Schindler joins us now from the Revitalization of the Downtown Power Plant Committee.
Pretty long name, isn't it?
And the last time I saw you was there at the Art
Festival.
The festival, which was just a blast. For, I think anybody would have thought that was unheard of, how many people were going to be there for that.
Well, we had no idea when we were planning how many would show up, and the count was over 5,000 for the 2 days.
Yeah.
So we were totally blown away.
And the interest is there. You are spearheading this drive to see what this area can be. What might it look like 5 years from now or 10 years from now?
Yeah, for sure.
And you went on a road trip of sorts down to Iowa. Talk a little bit about that. What did you learn down there?
There were 8 or 10 or 12 of us that went down. Austin patterned their Vision 2020 program after one that Dubuque had done. Theirs was Vision 2010. But the same sort of area. They had a huge manufacturing millwork area that was essentially abandoned, about 1 million square feet. And their group of people got busy and said, we have to do something, and that's what they did.
And these projects, we're looking at what do they call it, the
Millworks
District or something? That's what it's called now. These areas get so big, and over time they don't get used, abandoned buildings. I suppose there were people that thought, we just can't do anything. It's too big of a project. So how did they get beyond that?
Well, I think the same way Austin's doing it. You get a whole bunch of folks together and you scratch your heads and say, we have to do something. You know, what do you think we should do? What do you think we should do? And
so it's turned into kind of an artist's, is it an enclave or just like a walkway thing?
It's a whole area. There's a walkway along the Mississippi River, which is just gorgeous. There's a casino down there. There's a river museum there. There's restaurants. And then these other buildings that are multi-purpose, lofts are being created in some of the upper floors of some of the buildings, and retail. They're also setting aside a fair amount of space for art progress. You know, they want to have places where artists can come and work and store their materials. And
so we're, in simplistic terms, this is not just a coat of paint project. There was significant investment, capital investment there.
They never told us how many millions, but it's got to be millions and millions and millions.
Right.
They did street work. There were, you know, on the buildings themselves, it's heating and electricity and all those things. And yeah.
But we were talking before, it's a happening place now.
Mm-hmm. It's a very happening place, because we were there to tour it during the day and then went back there for dinner in the evening. And it's a busy place.
Boy, isn't that important? The whole all day long development in a community where you have people conducting business during the day, but it doesn't just close up at night, it continues. Is that kind of the goal, what you're looking at for the...
I think so. I think so. You know, if we're going to put that much of an investment into the power plant, it has to really be used.
Well, it's wonderful to see it taking shape in the art festival and everything else that you're working on with regard to that area. So thanks so much, Belita, for your service, and to all your committee members, too, for the work they're doing.
It doesn't happen alone. I'm here by myself talking, but there's a whole lot of folks out there that are working on this. So.
Wonderful. Belita Schindler, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us for On Cue. We'll see you again next time.
On Cue is a production of KSMQ Television in Austin, nonprofit public television.